Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rabbit Trail Podcast. This is episode number 120.
120.
Ooh, we are there. We have just broke through a lot of episodes, guys. 120. Let's give ourselves a little clap. Ooh,
wow.
Yay. All right, no, we're just glad you guys are joining with us. If you're listening out there on the podcast land, hey, thanks for being so faithful and keeping up with us, because we know that there are some of you that ditched over to YouTube world and stuff like that. We get it. But if we're in the car, if you're on your run, if you're just kind of engaged, we'd love to hear from you guys, love to connect with you. But if you're new, we want to welcome you to the podcast. This is a podcast sponsored by Olive Branch Community Church. And my name's Greg Harris. I'm the senior pastor here at Olive Branch. And this is kind of a place where we chase the truth wherever it runs. And we let the rabbits out on Sunday. They chase off down different trails, meaning my sermon or whoever's preaching. And then that hopefully spurs people into thoughts and maybe even questions, and they turn the brains on, and so they got some questions or they want to go deeper. Sometimes I just drop stuff because I need to save time, and so pick it up here and talk about it here. So there's lots of different things we go, but our favorite thing is when you ask questions and we like to answer them. So who's the we? Well, I got my co-hosts here. Why don't you guys say hi and introduce yourselves?
Hello, my name is Stephen Oldham. I'm the local outreach coordinator here. And if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for watching. Thank you for your comments. If you'd like to subscribe to the podcast, that'd be great. You could do that by just clicking the subscribe button, like the video, and you hit the alarm button, the bell button, if you'd like to get alerts. Yeah, share it. Definitely share it. That's the most important thing. Even if it's a short that you don't understand.
Yes, and hey, my name is Brent. I'm the Connections Pastor here at Olive Branch Church. Hello, boys. And if you have any comments or feedback, we'd love to hear it. And you can send it to us at rabbittrail@obcc.church, rabbittrail@obcc.church.
I asked Debbie if she had a comment, and she said, no, I don't really, because that would only add to Brent's ego.
Yes. Feed my ego. Feed my ego. I don't even know where I'm going with that. But one thing I did think of was episode 120, right?
Yeah.
And say our average podcast is about an hour and a half. That's pretty much like 16,000 hours we have been talking.
Is that really?
I think so.
Is that what you just added up?
120 times one.
Well, the first ones were only like 30
Maybe
minutes.
That's 16,000 minutes.
Yeah, minutes. That's got to be minutes.
That's got to be.
I don't think I've not been hanging out with you that long.
Yeah. Well, okay. I've never said I was good at math. I've made math mistakes before. I will make them again.
We make math mistakes every time we announce the program number.
Yes, we do. Steven's not saving her bacon anymore. So there you go. So again, I don't necessarily have a bad joke today. What I do have, I scoured the internet for church bulletin bloopers.
Brenton's terrible
I made a
jokes.
list. Yes, I made a list, and I'll read a couple of them for you, which I thought were kind of funny.
So what are these again? These are
church bulletins. You remember back in the day, they always had church bulletins with the news and announcements and everything.
Oh yeah, we used to have those.
We do those too, and so what we should probably start doing is making up our own church bloopers in our bulletin.
Since we don't
so we can read them.
Since we don't do bulletins, we should make up our own church bulletin that's a spoof and just hand it out every Sunday.
But here's a couple of church bulletin bloopers I thought were pretty funny. One of them was, there was an announcement in the church bulletin for a national prayer and fasting conference. And it said, the cost for attending the fasting and prayer conference includes meals.
Wait, so I guess they weren't fasting at the conference.
Well, I'm going to guess that it was a conference on fasting and stuff like that, and they weren't necessarily fasting. But so the other one said, Barbara remains in the hospital and needs blood donors for more transfusion. She is also having trouble sleeping and requests tapes of Pastor Jack's sermons. And
tapes?
Susie would be requesting more podcast.
Oh my gosh, that's old if that's a tapes.
Huh? Oh, I know. And then finally, I'll end here. But due to the pastor's illness, Wednesday's healing services will be discontinued until further notice.
That there was a Baptist church.
Yeah,
They didn't have enough
I
faith.
thought those were kind of cute. So. Boom chakalaka.
Yeah, we'll give you this.
Yay.
A golf clap.
Yeah, no, that was, yeah.
It is funnier than a golf game, but
That's true.
maybe not my golf game. But
Okay. Well.
So again, we are in the Vital Family sermon series, and Sunday you were talking about participation. So again, participating in the Vital Family, which is the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now let me ask you this: all the sermons because last week was Vital Family, being the church family, not your blood family. This one is participation. Are all the Vital Family series going to be about church? Or is that...
Although it's basically, my basic argumentation is that for your family, you need to be a part of the church family. The best thing that you can do for your family is to be a part of the church family. And you can't just go, you got to participate. And I know that may sound like a controversial comment, but even when it comes to Disneyland, people apparently need to be members and participate in stuff. So, I mean, we were having some weird conversations as Stephen was looking over the responses, right?
That's right.
So wait, let's go back to that. Then let's. What are Stephen's first impressions here? We usually
That's such a new segment. I forgot.
Yeah, it's like Stephen's first impressions as he's going to look over actually it's our most popular short now. Yeah,
it is.
You're reaching up. You're getting up
popular.
there, and so hey, congratulations.
So, well, what theological deep topic that I talked about spurred so much conversation? Disneyland.
Oh,
Evidently the short was on Disneyland.
It was when we were talking about giving and tithing
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And
So, the shorts are kind of trying to get your attention to draw you, hopefully, to the larger conversation. That's why there's a little tag at the end that tells you, hey, if you like this conversation or want to know the full context of it,
even
go
if
there.
you didn't like this conversation, you want to find out the full context of it.
Evidently, some people just are quick on the draw and like to just give responses, but there were quite a few responses in regards to Disneyland. So in the video, if you watch the short, it's basically saying that when people believe in things, they don't question oftentimes spending money for them. Disneyland being primarily one. If you really think Disneyland is going to entertain you, you're like, people fork out $6,000 for the Star Wars cruise ride or whatever, and people defend that.
Let me clarify something for you real quick here. Actually, get to your comments first. Let's see how that goes.
Oh, okay. So my thing is that, and some people believe in the Red Cross. I didn't say whether I believed or disbelieved in any of these organizations.
I think they all exist.
They all do exist.
I don't have a problem believing.
Well,
that
I don't
they
know. I
exist.
haven't seen it. Well, I've seen the Red Cross in person, so. But yeah, Disneyland is a magical place. It exists on a different plane, and never go after the pixie dusters because they do not do well with people attacking the things they believe in.
what is a pixie duster? Is that a Peter Pan
It's a
reference?
pejorative for people that are like extreme Disney fans. So this is a deep nerd dive here. So when you go into the nerd world, everybody has different nicknames for the different nerd groups. The very obsessive, completely and utterly loyal, never questions Disney are often referred to as the pixie dusters, often by themselves. So that's not a thing that I made up, but that's a thing that's online. If you go on the online community, if you go to Comic-Con or if you go to Celebration, you'll see people who are very much into Disney.
I will say,
So that
call
a few
me
of them-
all hard-hearted or callous or whatever. I do not get Disney at all.
You don't?
I get.
Send your comments to Brand.
People being very excited about Disney and the Disney character when you're 5 years old, okay? But when you're like 55 years old and you're still dressing up and going to Disneyland, I don't know.
You're not allowed to dress up and go to Disneyland.
You can
It's
go.
not
I don't
legal.
know what it's called. There's a name for it, but it's like near cosplay, where you dress in a way that kind of presents
Oh, yes,
themselves
yes.
as a member.
Using the
niece-
colors
my
or
niece
something.
does that all
Colors,
that
the
time.
shapes, but you can't dress like the characters
that
unless you're a child. Children can dress
But
up.
what if I identify as a child?
Well, that's the thing. We've never had that question in court. That would be interesting. What if I just showed up with my beard and said, I self-identify
As a 2-year-old, I get to come in free, right?
as a 7-year-old. I'm going to go 7. But yeah, so we got a lot of comments. I think part of it is people didn't understand like the Rorschach test that the internet is, what we're talking about. So it's like the one guy just says, okay, you go to the Red Cross and I'll go to Disneyland. So I was like, just don't get those confused, because if you're a refugee, you really don't want to go to Disneyland. They probably won't let you through the walls. They have walls at Disneyland, and they're very strict border enforcers. So the Red Cross will take you in, but Disneyland will not. You'll have a hard time getting through the security.
fight in terms.
But the Red Cross are no angels. Someone was picking a fight. I don't have a beef with the Red Cross one way or the other. I'm sure they do good things and not good things, but this guy here was upset at the Red Cross, so we had a...
I can tell you one thing about the difference between the Red Cross and the Southern Baptists. They actually, this is one of the true statistics, the Southern Baptists have an entire arm, and people don't even realize this, that's about helping in emergencies. So they'll send out churches to just go and clean up and do the kind of same stuff that you'd find a Red Cross doing. And they will actually go, they get there before the Red Cross. They set up the Red Cross's tents and do all this stuff with the Red Cross. Red Cross will do their things and then they'll leave. And then the Southern Baptists stay because their churches are there, and they'll literally stay in the city until everything is kind of built back up and the homes are cleaned up, and it's because it's an outreach to their actual local community. So another reason to participate.
Anyway. That's the thing, though. It is true.
The word you were
though.
looking for is called bounding.
Bounding.
Right? Bounding is where you represent a character, but you don't dress up as a character because they'll kick you out of the park. Because they'll kick you out of the park.
Yeah, and it's a whole fashion trend that I see a lot at conventions and things. But yeah, one person, Misfit Mama 2361, agrees with you. She thinks it's really creepy the way adults act like children. So in relation to Disneyland. So
that is a smart,
all comments to
a smart woman right
to
there.
you guys, but
to me.
No, him and
yes.
Misfit Mama
yes.
both have the same opinion about Disney. I like Disneyland, for the record. I don't like current Disney politics and things like that. That's a whole other rabbit hole we don't want to go down. But as far as like classic Disney, that to me, I enjoy the ideas behind that and the theme park and creating immersive experiences. But right now, I'd rather go to Universal Studios because that would be more fun.
I hate the idea of thinking I'm going to spend like almost $200 a person to stand in line all day long. I mean, really, you go to Disneyland and you spend from opening to closing, and you're lucky to get like 6 rides in for the whole day.
Yeah, no, they're way overcharging people right now.
And it's like, I can't even fathom spending. People complain sitting in traffic in the 91 freeway, and you can do that for free.
You're just not a true fan, Matt. If you believed in the heart of Disney, you would sit there. Just like this lady who said that she went to Disneyland She went 4 days at Disneyland Park in Orlando and spent a small fortune and had the time of her life, and it's hard to put a price on great memories.
It is.
So they really put on a great show. I posted videos of all the parks on my YouTube channel, and her YouTube channel is Base and Bikes. I don't recommend it. I haven't seen it, but if you check it out and you like it.
You can't put a price on memories, but I will tell you what.
It's like 6,000 is your limit.
If you go to the DMV for the day, you can get most of those memories for almost nothing.
And then if you drive away and speed away, you get a thrill ride at the end.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I'm getting to a point here because I think this is just
Disney's going to shut us down. Right?
Yeah, as long as we don't sing. No one's sing. We don't want them to strike the channel. Well, actually, I think people go to Disneyland amusement park to experience rides they've never experienced before, and for thrills for them. And says, why would you go around thinking about the negatives of every place you go? You would live miserably constantly. I don't understand the point of this short. And that is the point of the short. As what I'm saying is you go to church, you believe in God. Why would you sit around and complain about all the negatives all the time only?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. That's what I'm saying. That exactly makes the point about Disneyland. The idea is that people go to Disneyland, and if they're really into it, they don't care how much they spend because
or how long they stand in line.
Yeah, because they believe in that. They believe that they're having fun, and they believe that it's meaningful to them. They're creating memories, and I want that same thought to be what we do at church. We create memories, and we believe in this, and it's fun, and we can have fun. So I think, in a weird way, even though she probably didn't see the long-form video, she is making my point with the short, and so to me, that's great. That is my point.
Huge.
So I know there's not a price on memories, but isn't there a price on like precious memories? Isn't that what they were called?
Yeah, precious moments.
Moments. Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
My favorite is the precious moment where David is holding up Goliath's head, but it was all done in precious moment style. Someone made that doll. Really? I was like, that's the one for boys.
Yes, it is.
They didn't come up with a line. I don't understand. The judge's version of precious moments. That would be interesting.
That's pretty sweet.
I'd buy that.
Yeah, seriously.
But anyway, that's our deep dive down the rabbit hole of the internet and internet comments.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, thanks. I
Keep
appreciate
them coming.
it.
Yes, all you Disney apologists out there, just making sure that we don't blaspheme your
experience.
Yes.
Animal, animated
Exactly.
animal.
Your fictitious
Things
belief.
that we can't say on, or we'll get tagged. All right, so back to the other thing that's older, like called the church, much older, much older. So and has been very creative for centuries and centuries and centuries. Well, take us back in, Brent. What in the world are we talking about now? Participation, right?
Yeah, your sermon was the vital family, and it was about participating in the vital family. And, one of the things that Steve mentioned when we were sitting here before we turned the cameras and the mics on is when it comes to participating, when it comes to how we promote church and community and how we care for one another and serve one another, etc., do you feel that we tend to oversell and underdeliver? And I thought that might be a good conversation point.
So let me ask the question,
because we're doing a series on how vital the church is,
the vital family is vital. So when you mean oversell and underdeliver, you mean like the Bible's oversell? Do you think the Bible's overselling?
I say we say come to church. It's you're going to get your most meaningful relationships. You're going to get mentored. You need to learn about the Bible. You need to, it's where you find family, and then people come, and then if they don't fit into the demographics or they have a different experience. So are we saying like, hey, join a small group and all of your relational problems are going to be, you're going to be connected. You're going to make meaningful conversations. You're going to grow. And sometimes people do that or try that, and that doesn't seem to be the case for their experience.
You're saying like we as the church go, hey, if you're feeling marginalized, come here and let us marginalize you. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying like if you're sitting in church, you go, okay, they told me to come to church because they said I could get connected. And I sit in a service and I hear this great sermon, but then I don't meet anyone and I keep coming and I keep trying to talk to people. Sometimes I've been to churches and where everyone knows each other, but they don't talk to anyone new. And so you're kind of like coming in and trying to get connected. And I've seen this with friends that like travel around. I have a friend who travels from church to church because she's a traveling nurse. And she tries to find a church the first time she gets on the ground, and she does a lot of research. But what she's find is if the church is really tight, they really don't have room for her. And especially if she tells them, I'm only here for 6 months. And like, well, you're not going to be here, so we're not going to invest in getting to know you. Mm-hmm. So for her, she's like struggles with, I know I need to be in church, but I don't have, every time I go, it's can be a negative experience sometime. So sometimes that would be like if we're preaching a series on, this is the most vital relationships you can have is being in church, and that's not someone's experience. How do you deal with that, I guess, would be. Or is that true, or is that
I think the secret to going to church is what I used to tell our youth ministry all the time. When I was growing up, there would be these wire-framed, kind of jungle gyms that didn't look like anything but weird structure forms, and they'd get really hot and burn your hands.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so I would tell the students, I'm like, look, it's just a wire-form frame until the kids got on it and turned it into a spaceship, or hey, it's the fortress you're attacking, or oh my gosh, it's your monkeys in a cage. There was all this stuff you could do, but it was what you brought to it that made it what it was. The same thing is true for the church. Participation is the most critical. Like if you run into an obstacle, like they don't want to let you in, then you have to push past that, even to continue to participate. You make the friends individually. Mm-hmm. A corporate community is different than an individual person, and the bottom line is like, yeah, you're here for 6 months, and you come in and participate and give value. They're gonna be sad when you leave. They're still gonna bond with you. They're still gonna connect with you, but you've got to participate, and you've got to go in with that intention all the time. I really do think that it is that aspect that makes church come alive. If you're just gonna come and go and expect to get, you're just gonna it is a sell, because I'm selling you what you're gonna get. Well, I'm not selling you what you're gonna get. I'm instructing you on how church is actually to work, right? That's very different.
Yeah, and I one of the things I tell people oftentimes is, once again, community is not going to seek you out. You need to seek community out. And so again, whenever you engage in a community that's already existing, you kind of have to engage with it, and not just stand on the sidelines and hope that they find you. Although there is intentionality, I think, as a body of believers to try to reach out to those on the sidelines and and invite them into community. But again, kind of the onus is on you to some degree to connect with people.
Here's the thing: if everybody comes to church and they are literally not they're there to get, nobody's going to go connect with that person.
Right.
If everyone's participating in the way that they're like, hey, I want to participate in because I want to have community, and you see somebody and they want to have, everybody's gonna go connect. It's the difference between what we used to do when you would greet everyone when they came in a room versus now I'm going to wait for you to come greet me. It's actually something I've heard that the internet is, like with social media stuff, has created this
Nobody
kind of
knows how to do that anymore.
Yeah, you expect everybody to come to you to find out about you because I'm presenting who I am. It's your job to come get to know me. But it used to be, no, you walked up and you shook a hand, you said hi, and you introduced yourself. That if everybody did that in a place, you would meet the people in the place. But when everybody waits for everybody else to come up, now you've created a situation where nobody's going to meet anybody.
It's like a bunch of 11-year-old boys at a junior high dance, all against the wall.
Well, I think that's...
They going home going, I never danced with anybody. How come? Well, I never asked anybody, but...
Nobody came and asked me.
I do think there's a whole generation of people, though, that don't have these communal experiences anymore. And so they're going to have to have... they're going to have to learn, and it's going to be difficult because I don't think people know how to hang out anymore. It's not a thing too many people do. If they do, it's usually on a digital format and a Discord. If they go, it's like they're picking which group's going to have the best experience. So that the one thing the internet has done is now when you want to have fun, you text 10 of your friends, and it's the one that you want to hang out with the most is the one you hang out with. But in the old days, you didn't have a phone. You just hung out with whoever was available. And you really have much of a choices. It usually was the people in your neighborhood.
I'm so glad that's how it was because I wouldn't have had any friends then. So.
But now you're hanging out for popularity. So you're hanging out for the best experience, right? So that we've kind of put a value on relationships before they even happen. You don't really have to go through some things to figure out whether it's valuable. So I do think, though, churches are going to have to accommodate the people's lack of skill at some point of having relational connections in the younger generation. That's why I think things like dances used to be things that churches put on, places for them to hang out, just to have social interaction, not always have to have like a spiritual interaction, but to have some kind of social connection that we're creating community, because there are no third places other than Starbucks. And like even here, when the school gets out, all the kids at the junior high go over to the Habit and they just sit and flood around and sit around and drink sodas. And then you could see that the people working there are kind of like, man, I wish these kids would leave, right? So there's not really a place for people to feel comfortable doing that. And I think that's going to leak into church where you're going to go, well, I don't know what this is. Some guy talks to me and then I sit around and try to look for someone. How do I do that? And then you join a small group and then they're already all friends and you're kind of like, okay, this is really deep and I don't know what I'm doing. So I can see how someone might think this is really a hard obstacle for me to overcome. And then there are people groups that I think don't always fit into the demographics of the group that they're in. So you have singles here that have a hard time finding relationships. There is a false, there's an expectation. I think you can put too much of an expectation on what you think you're going to get. But I do think for me though, what I've found over the years is that if you don't go at all, you don't have the answer is going to be definite. You're not going to have anybody.
There's no opportunity.
There's no opportunity. So even if you've had a lot of bad experiences, you have to get used to those in order to get to a good experience. So if you have a church of 600, it'd be hard pressed that if you kept trying after a year or two that you couldn't find a friend, or you couldn't stumble through that, or at least to present it to the pastors and say, look, I don't know how to do this. I don't really know what I'm doing. Go to a membership class or go to a group class, meet some friends. That's kind of how it works.
I'll tell you what, I've pressed the congregation a few times, like, hey, you need to not just get in your car, come to church, go and get in your car and drive away. Go stick around, say hi to some people, meet people. And a couple weeks ago, I had a friend of mine come up to me, and I've known him at the soccer fields and stuff with my son, and he was just telling me the story about that particular sermon a long time ago, and he's like, I heard you, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot, and stepped out, and he just said hi to a couple people, and one of them is somebody that he's become extremely good friends with, and just like, but he's like, I would never met this person had I ever not taken it up to actually go say hi or go engage. And now he's part of the greeting team that's trying to help people connect and meet. And that's that idea. I think that it takes the participation, and it takes some perseverance and participation. One of the things that we also have to remember is that, like, when we talk about participation, like, I think we oversell ourselves more than I would say that anybody in the church is really trying to oversell you. I think the church
can I really oversell myself, though?
Yeah, like,
I mean, come on.
Yeah, you're always meeting your own expectations.
I'm exceeding them.
I mean, when they're low.
I have no expectations for myself. I am always exceeding my.
Well, you got dressed, so that's good.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
This is the clapping. The clapping.
Yes. The clapping episode.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought I lost my place now. Thanks.
You're
you
welcome.
ADD
Longevity of staying.
Oh, the perseverance and just keep pressing through. I think we oversell ourselves in the sense that I go in expecting it to be great in this thing, and I've put my own expectations on. I put my own problems. If you really talk to church leadership or people who have participated for a long time in church, they're going to go, lower your expectations. Like, it's not what you're thinking it is. Like,
organized church isn't as organized as you think it is.
Right. We're an organized religion. Or a disorganized religion. But no, because it's people, right? It's like, you've got to press in. You got to push past the difficulty. You got to keep pressing until, and then the worst part is, I mean, really, honestly, what most people don't like when they encounter church is themselves. Because they don't want to face what's going on inside of them. They don't want things to be difficult. They don't want things to be hard. And when it is, it's oftentimes, in my own life at least, something I'm bringing to the table, not necessarily what somebody else is. Now, it's not always the case, but most of the time, I'm bringing something to the table that's making it more difficult. And so I'm not willing to deal with that. It's easier for me just to punt and go somewhere else. And what do we always say? Wherever you go, you're going with yourself.
So
there you are. Wherever you go, there you are. Yeah, and I mean, like, again, when it comes to engaging, I would say persistency, again, is a key factor. And one of the things we always talk about, especially for people that are newer to the church, haven't really been in small groups before, and now they're looking for that community, and we point them towards small groups. One of the things we always tell them is, don't let your first experience necessarily stop you from being part of a small group. If you go and you don't feel like you connected, or you don't feel like this is the right fit, don't just go, okay, small groups don't work for me. Go find another small group, and go to a couple of different small groups until you find that connection, and then take part in that community. Because sometimes just like in professional counseling too, try a counselor. And if you don't feel like you connect, don't just give up on counseling. If you need it, find another counselor, And there's a difference between finding a good connection and then just finding something that just agrees with you, right? Don't go running around asking people questions till you get the answer you want, and then go, this is right,
So, give me an example. I want to give a little bit more of an example on, like, persistence. Like, think back to when, like, we're all working at churches, at the church, and you worked at a few churches. I've worked at one other one briefly as an intern. But when we stop and think about this, I mean, remember when you tried to serve originally? It's like sometimes that first service, it wasn't really, it was good. You were helping people, but it wasn't always like the best fit or whatever. Or for me, like, they asked me to lead worship for the junior high group. And we had fun, and we did it for like 6 months. And it was like disorganized enough that my band members left, and then they were like, well, we're going to do something different. And so then I wound up being the game guy. And it was like, the best, craziest stories is like, it was back in the time where American Gladiators was out, right? Mm-hmm. So we were like, we dressed up as the game guys. And so we were all dressed in certain characters. And so we all dressed in these various forms.
Can you picture Greg in spandex?
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
I was not in spandex.
Lycra,
My character was of a particular group of people who ride bikes with little placards on their white shirts.
Oh.
So, and so I was the elder, and Yeah, and one of these days it was supposed to be like wrestle the guy out of the ring kind of a thing. And so I, had these volunteer kids get up. They think they're gonna, and I literally took this kid. I kind of did that whole Greco-Roman step back, and I flung the kid across the stage into and that was not good. But so obviously we didn't keep being the game guys for very long, but.
And that's how he found community at the hospital.
And that's why I became a pastor. Throw people around, hurt people. That's what. No, just kidding. But I just remember it's not like it all made a lot of sense. There were things I wanted to do that I didn't get a chance to do. I wanted to be a part of the main worship team and sing, and they were like, "Nah, we don't really want you to be a part of that because you're doing that over there." And it's like.
So the story of David and Goliath, was that a game night gone wrong at church?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember what was you got voluntold? I think when you're one of your first leadership experiences, right?
Obviously, I was at a point in my life where I was just coming back to church, and so it was here at Olive Branch, but it was way back on Park Ridge, and we had 100 people, and Sharon, the pastor's wife, walked up to me one day and said, hey, we're looking for somebody to oversee the host ministry. Would you pray about that? And I went, yeah. And then I didn't pray about it that week. I forgot. And the next week I was in the bulletin as a guy to talk to about joining the host team because I was overseeing the host team. And I went, well, doggone it then. She prayed for it. And so that's what I get. I couldn't tell her, whoa, I did pray about it and God said no.
And that from that point on, that's all you've ever done, right?
No. Luckily, that was short-lived. And then I became a youth leader for years and years. And that was probably the highlight of my life.
Is that how you lost your hair?
No, I don't.
That was already gone.
I don't think you ever saw me with hair, right?
Never.
No. Yes.
Never.
Boom.
But I mean, I might guess my point is it's not just because it's a church actually doesn't mean it's it's going to fall from the sky and suddenly you're doing exactly what God's always called you to do and you're meant to do, and it's just that's not how it works. There is a perseverance. I mean, your story is one of a lot of perseverance through different ministry positions and things and trying to do different stuff. It just didn't, come out and woohoo, I participated. And
yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. When you join a church, the questions you want to ask yourself are, what are your own personal expectations of the experience? You know what I mean? And because sometimes people ask for more, they're asking for more than what other people are supposed to do. Sometimes people put their faith in a leader and they're thinking that's supposed to be, I need a father figure, or they need someone that they didn't get when they were a child. You need to know what your expectations are. Growing up, different expectations of when you start volunteering at a church. What do I want to do as opposed to what do they want me to do? And so I've worked at churches for years and then found out they have different expectations for what they wanted me to do for them than what I wanted to do. And that meant I had to go on and explore other ministry options and things like that. So even when you're been at a church for a long time, those issues still come up. But I still feel like, where would you learn what you liked, even if you get a little of it? So I learned theater from church. I learned to interact with people on a stage. I learned how to speak. I learned how to talk with people. I learned how to interact. I would have never gotten those opportunities. So even though there were a lot of negative opportunities that presented themselves to me, there's so many more positive ones that I've had after persevering. But I don't think any of those things start to come until people know that you're serious about wanting to be a part of the community. I think it's like anything. If someone just shows up and acts like, hey, serve me, you're going to get some polite handshakes, asks where you're at. But if you actually go, hey, I want to find a church where I can just press in and start caring for people, I think you'll find people will jump in and start caring for you as well. And I've seen people go straight from out of church into a ministry, and I'm not talking like they're doing anything other than helping someone, and feel like, man, I've never had that experience before. I've never helped anyone and then be happy for it. Mm-hmm. Just there's a lot of opportunities. Sometimes you have to explore everything. And the other thing is don't just get loyal to one thing. Like you said, with small groups, you go to a small group, every small group has a different expectation. Everybody in the group doesn't always know what they want, but sometimes when you're in one, you have to ask, why am I here? Is it for relationships or is it for learning? Because that's totally a different expectation. Some Christians come in on Sunday and think that's all I need. but you actually need to be connected to human beings. And I think that's the part that you're trying to talk about for the Vital series, is that it is vital that you're in community, not just in your family, that they're connected, and they're connected in major ways. Because my saddest thing is when someone has just been playing what I call the periphery of the church. They want to be there, but they don't really want to be there. And then they have a crisis. And then we're trying to help them. It's actually harder because I don't know much about you. And it's really hard to get into your life and on an emergency and figure out everything that you need help for. But if you've been a regular member of the church, one of the things I got to say is they'll come out and help you if you're in a situation where you need help. If you've been here, and then we know who you are. And if you don't, we'll still help you. It's just a little more difficult.
Yeah, and I will say, again, with the knowing you part, when you do find yourself in a time of difficulty or crisis, there's not really a trust issue there, right? You've been part of the community, you're in trouble, and
we'll help.
The community's coming around to see how much they can help you. Sometimes we can't help people as much as they need help, but we're willing to help, rather than if you're like a stranger and then you step into the community going, help me, there is an element of suspicion. Like, okay, is this person trying to play the system? Do they really need help? So there's more vetting and hesitation going on, even though we try not to be too hesitant in helping people. But when you are in community and when you are known, then your needs are more known.
I think
there's more trust going on.
Another thing I want to share with people, because there's everyone who's listening may need this at some point. I don't know, but I know there are people who are listening who've changed. They've moved to another state. They're trying to get engaged in a church, things like that. And when you've been really involved in one church, and then you shift over to another church, it's super important that you don't come in like, hey, I'm the rock star who did this thing at this other church. And it's hard to remember that you got to go back to the beginning sometimes to earn that trust and to rebuild into that. And you got to let churches be patient. They don't know you. They don't know your history. They don't know who you are. You're not walking up with letters of recommendation, from your pastor or whatever. And that's is very critical, because they're just like any sports team. You can have that hot shot who shows up and just alienates the rest of the team, and it's like, oh, well, we don't like this guy, trade him quick, or whatever. It's kind of the opposite of like if I'm trying to get started at church, it's like I got to figure out what I'm doing. Some people come in, they know exactly what they're doing. They're like, well, I was preaching at the men's thing. You got to let me preach at the men's. No, we don't know what your theology is. We don't. So just word of advice is like kind of realize when you move churches, you are resetting. And it may not be as long of a track to return to what you knew were your gifts, but you have to really give it a serious perseverance and go at caring and getting to know the leadership and stuff so they can get to know you, if that's what God has really placed in your life as a gift. And I know a lot of people have quit on that journey. And so they're just going to their churches that they've moved to in whatever state it is. And it's like, you can't do that. You got to keep pressing, keep loving, living, and sharing Christ. And that living portion is the perseverance part. You got to just keep being known, and eventually you may not end up in the same position, but you may end up in something
the different churches have different ministerial needs too, like different gifts or different things emerge oftentimes in a person. They didn't even know they had that, because now there's a different kind of a need. So if you think about, they're not franchises, in my opinion. They're different organizations that are ministering to different communities, and the Holy Spirit has different things he's doing at different churches. And to be aware, like, what is their battle? What are they going up against? What do they care about? What is the outreach like in the neighborhood? What is the worship like? What is the teaching like? And how can I contribute? Those are kind of good questions to ask. But I think it takes at least 6 months to know if you like the church, and the theology, the stuff that you would look at that's important. But it takes like a year, I think, to be even kind of known. Like to be present for a year and constantly kind of make yourself known, if you're interested in moving on. Mm-hmm. I guess the question I have is just, do you have an expectation that everybody who becomes a member has to do something in the ministry, like ministry wise?
What do you mean by that?
So if you are a member of a church, what is the expectation, I guess, of being in that level? And just kind of talking about why is that important? Because I know that's oftentimes what people do. They kind of want to go to a church and they don't really want to be pinned down to anything or like membership or anything. There's just been over the years kind of a pushback to people saying, hey, I'm on board. So they just like, I'll just attend, and if I want to help, I'll help.
Yeah. And I mean, let's talk about membership for a little while. The importance of membership. Why? What are the biblical roots of membership? Why would membership be considered biblical, even though membership itself isn't a biblical term? But
it is. It's in 1 Corinthians, but it doesn't mean the same thing we mean.
Okay. But I do think that I like the tagline we have with our membership class is the idea of moving from going to church to being the church.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you're a member, you're committing more to the vision and the mission of the church, and you're engaged in fulfilling that mission and that vision, versus somebody who just attends, the church, and it's more of that consumer mentality, right? And I do think that membership is important and key in that role of being involved and committed. I lost my train of thought. So
the importance of membership.
Well, I think what Brent's getting at is that in our world, as talking about membership, it can be very confusing because the Bible does have a concept of membership.
Covenant, right?
Right. Well, it basically means you're a member of Christ, right?
Yeah.
And so, you'll have Calvary Chapel churches and stuff like that that'll say, we don't do membership because everybody who's a Christian is a member of the body of Christ. Well, I agree with that. But that doesn't mean everybody is a member at Olive Branch, in the sense of
you're on board with your particular mission.
You're on board with where this particular local church is going and what God's called us to do, and that you're going to listen to the elders and the leadership that God has placed in this church. This gets back to me to conversations about what is a church. A church isn't just your small group at your house or a couple people hanging out having a Bible study. If there's a real gathering of the saints, God's going to bless it with leadership. And that leadership is expected to equip the saints to do the work of ministry, and for those who are being equipped to, in some way, follow after the leadership that they've been given. And so there's this symbiosis there that has to occur to be a church. For us, when we talk about membership, we're not saying, if you're not a member, you're not saved. That would be silly.
Or you can't come here.
Or you can't come here, right? Or you can't. We're not even saying you can't serve here. We're just saying that if you're going to state that you're with us and you're, I'm in, I love this church, I'm with you guys, and we go okay, then we say that means you should be serving. And people push back on that, right? You've had that situation.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a minute, which I found is kind of weird. But one of the things I think that's important about membership is the unity of membership, right? In the sense that I do think that many people go to church for many different reasons. Some people think the church needs to focus on social justice, and we should be the warriors and of social justice. And some people think that we should be a caring church that goes out and helps the hurting and the needy. And some people think that we should get out there and overturn politics. And so, there's so many different reasons what people think we should be doing as a church. They have different agendas when they're getting here. Some people, that's what our family always did. It's tradition, So part of membership is that part of bringing everybody together, going, this is why we're here. So everybody, can go, yes, we're in this for the same reasons. We know what the purpose is. We know what the mission is. We know what the intentions are. And I think that it makes the church more powerful, because if everybody has a different agenda and everybody has a different purpose, it's kind of like taking gunpowder, throwing it on your garage floor and lighting a match. You might get a spark, but it's not going to have any power, versus, when it's intentional and focused and it's put into a shell, it not just packs power, but it packs intentionality. And one of the weird things, not one of the weird things is what I'm going to say, but the thing after it, but is the idea that we believe to be if you're going to step into membership, you're taking more responsibility for the mission and the vision. You're taking more responsibility of being part of the community, unified together, caring for each other, serving one another through your resources and your time, talents, and treasures. And so, again, one of the requirements or the expectations of a member would be that they are serving. And it's funny because I've had people come to the membership class, and when we say that, they're like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to be a member anymore. And some of the weird ones were
they already were serving, right?
They were already serving, and then they're just like, okay, I don't want to go further in membership because it's a requirement to serve. And I'm like, but you're serving already. And they're like, yeah, but you guys make it a requirement. So therefore I feel like it's a legally bound thing instead of doing it from the joy of my heart. And I'm like, but you were doing it from the joy of your heart when you started serving. Nothing's changed. And it's like, I don't understand that pushback against expectation.
It's
when we are committing to each other.
I would say, theologically speaking, it is it's the misnomer of legalism. Like we used to, legalism for a long time, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, was, oh my gosh, you're telling me what to do. Like, you can't tell me I have to have a quiet time. You can't tell me I have to go to worship. You can't tell me I have to go to church and be a Christian. And it's like, well, hold on. Legalism is that we're not even saying you have to do this to be a Christian. We're just saying you have to be this to be declared a member, right? So it has nothing to do with your salvation. Legalism is you must do this thing to be saved. You must hit all these markers to be saved. That's legalism. What we're talking about, and if you go, oh, I'm saved by grace, and I have no expectations even after I'm saved, there's a term for that, and they need to uncomplicate the term. The word is antinomianism. And antinomianism, which means anti-nomos, which is the law, so against the lawism. And what they're saying is like, we're so against the law, we can do whatever we want. Libertinism is another term that was used, or Corinthianism. There's all kinds of weird stuff through the church history. But the issue is that you somehow think that there's no obligation set upon you, that you don't have, hey, I'm a Christian, but I don't have to worship God. And I get it. I get that idea. It's about I want to worship God. I love God, so I desire it. But that doesn't mean, and so this gets back to a kind of like that duty versus love thing.
He said duty.
Howdy doody. But there is a sense that it's like, no, the requirement can be there. God is of a kind of glory that he requires our worship, because that's who he is. It's an expectation on his own value and worth.
And I will say that the idea that I don't want to serve anymore because now you have made that a requirement for membership. It wasn't like a one-time thing. I mean, I've heard this.
It's not a lifetime. It's not a lifetime thing either, right? They don't have to continue to serve for very long.
Right. But it's not a one-time thing. Like, there was only one instance of that happening.
Oh, you've had it happen to you several times. I've had
it happen numerous times,
You teach our membership class.
And so one of the, just funny anecdote, but we just revamped the membership class in January, and I was rewriting a lot of the stuff. And one of the things I wrote in there, because this whole idea that as members we serve one another, we care for one another, and I put in there a comment that said, you can't serve one another without serving one another. So it's like this idea of serving one another, you actually have to serve one another to fulfill that.
I can do it in my heart.
Jean, when she was editing it, she's like, okay, this is really stupid. You should take that out. And I'm like, no, I like it. And she was like, no, it doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, no, it makes sense. You can't serve one another without serving one another. You get it? And she's like, no, really, Brent, you need to take this out. And so I ran over to Greg, and I'm like, what do you think of this? You think it? And Greg's like, yeah, that's stupid. Take it out.
What did you put in its place?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I get what you're saying.
Well, you can't do it in your heart.
Say you're serving each other.
I'm your friend. That's like going through. We're married in my heart. Like, okay, what does that mean? You didn't go to the altar. You didn't make any commitment. You don't have to do anything. No, but I have the feelings.
Right.
And, if I choose to be there for you, just don't make it official.
Yeah.
My thing, though, is these expectations typically only go one way. Nobody wants what they want in writing, for them, but they definitely have an expectation of what the church should be doing. And so the problem is if you have an investment in thinking, if the church doesn't do this, I'm going to get upset. But then when we say, okay, we'll do that, but then you have to do this, and I go, no. That's the concern that I have, is that you do have expectations of a church. And if they don't fulfill those expectations, typically we'll hear about it because you think, well, the churches are supposed to be A, B, C, and you have a definite idea what that should be. And if we put it in writing, though, then you're like, no. And I think part of that is there's a trust issue in our world where we're not willing to go through that trust and say, like, I put in writing what I'm going to do, so I have to live up to it. But it's not just a one-way thing. We're saying, here's what our mission is, and we're going to do this, and you can hold us accountable to this too. And so now it's kind of a covenant, like this is our mission. We agree to try to do this. And if you're a member here and you think that's a great idea, great. Now that's what we're doing. It's like we can depend on you and you can depend on us. And I think the fear goes both ways. And if we can lower the fear, I think part of the reason why membership is even a thing is because we need to know if you agree with our mission so that we can rely on you when God tells us we need to go do something. I don't want to have to choose between what we feel God is telling us to do and what you have as an expectation that isn't in writing. Well, so putting it in writing is helpful for, I think, everybody.
And what we're also trying to say is you can't call yourself a member without being a participant. Like, how can you? I'm a member of that church. Well, how often do you go? Well, I go every week. Oh, what do you do there? Nothing.
Yeah.
It's like that's a spectator. That's like I'm not part of the team. I mean, I know we like to talk like that, like where I'm like, my Laker, whatever sports team. It's like we did this. It's like you put yourself. It's like that's not you, dude. Like you're not on the team. Like you didn't do anything. It's like you didn't. You maybe bought some stuff and helped pay for their paychecks, but that's about it, and a very small portion. Mm-hmm. But
I will say this: being a Steelers fan forever, it used to be much more emotionally difficult on me when the Steelers lost, and especially
I can attest to that.
Got to the playoffs and they lost. I mean, I was just devastated. I was angry, and I really almost, when looking back, I'm not that way anymore. But when I look back, I feel like I almost believed that I wanted them to win more than they wanted to win.
Also, the opposite is true. I mean, like, I don't think we're not going to make exceptions for people in certain circumstances. Like, if you're handicapped, then, we're not going to be like, you need to clean the roof or something weird. I don't know what people think they're indentured servitude or something. I just think this is a partnership. And that doesn't mean that you can't even participate in the church in the sense that you can come and be a regular attender and go to a small group. We're not going to restrict any of those things. It's not like exclusive access or anything weird like that most people think of when they think of membership.
But the one of the other odd things when it comes to church and life and participation is, and I wonder, you kind of hit on this a little bit when you brought it up, was this idea of like, the church. Some churches they're into the politics thing, they're into this thing, that thing, and what I wanted, and if you're coming to a church and you're looking for something to be preached a particular way, you want the politics from the pulpit, or you want it to stay out of the pulpit, or you want to be, hey, we're all about orphans, or we need to be the global missions church, and I find this happens a lot in a lot of places, especially amongst congregants who are really. And this isn't to offend them. This is actually to honor that they're involved and they're invested.
They care.
And they care. And they want. But the problem is, you got to remember that the church, when we talk about like the organization of what seems to be how Ephesians 4 is defining what the church is, the gathering of the saints, that is it is a discipleship place. They are equipping you with the Word of God, because it's all these people who teach the Word of God. All those little leaders who are, you've got the apostles and the
You're
prophets.
Talking about in Acts?
Yeah, this is Ephesians chapter 4.
Okay.
Apostles and prophets, evangelists and pastors and teachers. These are the people who equip with
church.
the Word of God the saints for the work of ministry. And so here's the thing: a church is not the ministry. ministries meet needs. The leadership that you would think of as like the church staff or whatever, their job is to build disciples, equip you to build disciples. We're a disciple. Really, essentially, the church, quote unquote, is a disciple-making body that the disciples do ministry. And so there's a thing you got to remember. If you want your particular need that you're hitting in the culture, that this particular thing that you're kind of zooming to be the centerpiece of the church, you're making yourself, really, I would say you're turning your church into a parachurch ministry.
Well, the churches get smaller and smaller because those particular needs that you want are only going to be, there may be maybe 20, 30 other people that might feel the same way if it's a very, very niche kind of a thing.
But I think my point is that, but if you let the gathering be the disciple-making place and the place where we're gathered, like you start thinking of it as like, hey, we're together, and then we're together so we can do ministry. We're being equipped with the word. We're being challenged with the word. We're being helped with the word. We're building up other disciples. And then we have this gift that's been given to us to deal with this issue and to particularly engage in the church and engage in the world in a certain way. So like, yeah, you care about politics. And guess what? You find 7 other people in the church who care about politics in the same way that you do.
It's easier to facilitate.
Now you can actually either create a ministry and do something in that world, or you can engage with another ministry that's already out there and do that. Or say I care about pro-life, or I care about orphans, or because the misnomer is twofold. You get all these groups out there that yell and scream the churches need to do more about. They need to talk more about and just fill in the pet project from your worldview group or your heresy hunting group or whatever. And basically it's impossible. If I preached everything everybody told the churches to step up and start preaching on, something's going to be left out, right? Second is the other problem, that there's Christians who feel guilty, that they feel like personally they're supposed to like
do all these things,
do everything.
Yeah,
they're supposed to have an orphan and bring a homeless person into their home and make sure that they've got that they're stopping the wars, and they're making every immigrant is, I can care for them, I got to be part of. And those people end up burning themselves out because they don't actually understand that no, God's gifted you in a particular sphere, in a particular place. Focus where God's put you. Not everybody's an eye, not everybody's a hand, not everybody is, and we're not supposed to run around and say that needs to be the whole body. That's the danger also. So when you participate in the church, remember that's a participation with other disciples to meet needs. But the church itself, as an organized group of people, is there to build up and equip the saints so that we are mature, that when we go out to meet the needs and do the ministry, we are not passing heresy. We're actually effective with the gospel. There's so much more to this. And then the last thing is, don't think that your giftedness is your ministry. For example, you may be gifted with administration. Well, there's not going to be a ministry of administration. Like, no,
every ministry needs one.
Yeah, exactly. I used to laugh. Like I tell you all the time, like, oh man, I want that prayer ministry. Let's get that prayer ministry launched. And people always look at me cockeyed when I say, and please do not put a prayer person over the prayer ministry. They're like, what? I want a leader over the prayer ministry. Because last time I've had prayer people over the prayer ministries, they would sit around praying and asking God to show them what they would do next. And they wouldn't go anywhere. And then they would pray themselves out of existence because nobody was leading them to get anything done.
Right.
And I would rather have a good leader who could help guide a whole bunch of prayer people to really pray about the right things, even if that guy is not gifted in faith with prayer. That's okay with me. Let the parts play their parts. But I think that's hard for people when they really do.
The coach doesn't necessarily get on the field. He organizes the talent.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want him running the plays.
Tells them what the goal, what the plans are.
There's some of those coaches you do not want out there trying to be a quarterback.
Yeah. You don't want him running the plays.
No.
But that's critical to a right understanding about church. You've got to understand your gifts are not your ministry. Your gifts are what you bring to a ministry. A ministry is meeting needs, and the ministry is not the church. The church is the place that builds you up in the knowledge of Christ, builds you up in your maturity, so that as you engage in these ministries, you do it with the right character, with the right heart, with the right motives, using these gifts given by the Spirit, and then it starts really churning and going. But
So maybe we have some olive branches who are watching, and they kind of want to know, what are the specific things that we as a local group are doing? Like, what is it that's different? Like, if you become a member, what are you saying? Oh, yeah, I want to do that too. What are some of those things that maybe you talk about at the class, or that they may not be aware of? I know they probably heard Live, Love, and Share a couple times, but what are we saying? Like, when you do membership, what's unique about Olive Branch as opposed to going to another church?
Well, I mean, I think, okay, membership and membership class. So membership class is just information.
Just information.
and a commitment. You're making a commitment.
and an opportunity to make that commitment. So basically, one of the things I adjust with is the idea that some people think, no, I am committed to, the mission at Olive Branch Church. And then you go, well, what is that mission? And they're like, I don't know, okay, how are they structured to get it done? I don't know. What are the, what are the goals that they have? I don't know. How can you be committed then? So I think part of membership class is getting that information of, okay, this is what, because the church global, we all have the same
commandment,
right?
Yeah, the commission.
Now, how you're going to get that done? What is your strategies? What are your plans? Each church, local church has a different idea of how they're going to get that done, a different vision, so how are we structured to get that done? How, what is the vision and the mission and the strategies to get that done? And then it's like, okay, are you in or not? Are you bought into this, and are you committed to furthering the mission and the vision of the church? So I think that's kind of what the membership is basically for, and then giving you the opportunity, and then reminding you that the commitments, like serving one another and being involved in engaged in the community here, are aspects of membership that you don't necessarily escape, when you commit to being a member.
So what would make us, why be part of Olive Branch is kind of your question. Like, why would you step into that membership class? And it'd be because, our aim is really to bring about, I'm going to put it in the terms that we're going towards, like not the terms just of the past, but like
it's our vision.
The big vision is that we would be I would like to be us to be the premier disciple making church in Southern California, if not the nation. It would be amazing. What I mean by that is that we are a church that is focused on people going from not knowing Jesus to knowing Jesus to becoming capable of being somebody who leads somebody to Jesus and walks them through the process of becoming somebody who could lead somebody to Jesus, who can walk somebody through becoming able to lead somebody, and you just keep doing it. Our process is to love Christ, live Christ, share Christ, right? To love Him, to have these sets of knowledge and devotion and connections with God through the Word of God, through prayer and through community, to live for Him by living out the representation of Jesus in your ministry giftedness, in your works, in the spheres of influence that you are native in. And my argument there would be just that we would be a people who improve our native spheres. And what I mean by that native sphere is everybody's native sphere. Their ultimate is kind of where your influence is, what in your culture. And we have different aspects of that in the culture that we think of, and that by doing good and building into your workplace, or doing good and building into your child's education or their schools, or doing good, and really the biggest focus you can have is within your spiritual family, your church, and the natural family, extended and otherwise, you have the greatest impact. You have the greatest impact with the least amount of resistance. You can make huge difference. And so just move it a little bit, like push it forward a little bit, like 1% of gains over time, and you revolutionize a place. And then as you do that, then you're talking, well, what about arts? What about media? What about these things? Yes, some of us are native to those worlds. You're writing, you're doing things like that. And so how do you move that forward? And then ultimately, I really think that our hope and dream would be that people who know Christ so well with a whole Christian worldview is sharing that with others in an effective manner that is leading people to Christ so they can bring them up to do the same. That's just the basic engine. If that's rolling, which I would like to see as the essential piece of who we are, that and that can happen whether you want to do it through classes, one-on-one, individually, but really it's leading you to feel like you're making that impact in your particular world, your particular sphere for Jesus, and that you're ready, that you're at a place that can answer the questions of your friends, train you into do the same thing, make impact and understand how to do that in whatever that sphere is. And ultimately, the other thing is that we're just not bent out of shape about particular persnickety theological issues. Like, I like theology.
Generous orthodoxy.
Because I got stolen.
You got stolen from a guy who likes to do heresy.
Yeah, do heresy. So it's like I like to say that we're very, we're robust in our theology in the sense of like we're willing to deal with the different conversations, but there is an essentials that you're just not going to.
Yeah, there's a box.
Yeah.
But if you're in the box, we don't say you have to have that one thing that's inside the box. So.
And then from there, I really believe that we can help bring unity amongst the churches in town. I'm not up for doing everything because there are some churches that do it so much better than us, right? I mean, if we had a church out there that was just knocking it out of the park in the area of working with the homeless, like what a complicated issue. And you loved wanting to care about the homeless, man, I would rather send people over there, go get involved with them, go get connected with them, do that and let us know, be our liaison. We want to have teams that work with them. We're not going to reproduce what they're doing, but what we're going to do is we're going to invest and we're going to continue to push people over into that direction and they're going to know we're doing this. In fact, we're going to help you and care about you. We're going to promote this because this is important. This is doing great work, and we want to see it continue to go. And I think that if churches would allow each other to be the part of Christ that he's called us to be and do those well and then endorse each other instead of playing this little kingdom of mine, it's like, no, I think you would end up with a dynamic that could reach the 9115 corridor because we would unify around the gospel. And if you reach this corridor, you're going to impact Orange County, LA County, San Diego, Riverside, because all the workers are driving there. Mm-hmm. That's where they're going. And everybody who's leaving those counties are moving here. You would have massive impact by just getting churches together and just being encouraging about what they're doing well and endorsing it and building with one another. But it starts with disciples making disciples and seriously having a place that's going to finish off your discipleship. So many people aren't done. So many people have gotten so far that they got their Bible knowledge, but they never took that step and now it's your turn to make a disciple. If you don't have spiritual children or grandchildren, like you haven't hit that discipleship threshold yet. And that's what we're going to be about.
And, and part of it too, I mean, one of the things you said in the sermon too, you were up on stage and you're like, I'm not Olive Branch,
Nope.
We're Olive Branch. And so again, when you are committing to the mission, you're not committing, okay, I'm committing to this leadership group,
It's gay for you guys.
We're committing to one another. We're committing to caring about each other. We're committing to discipling one another. We are committing to serving one another. And, kind of that idea of, first service serves second service and vice versa, so that there's this symbiotic relationship going on. So where I know that if I have small kids and I can go into the service and just not be distracted wondering what's going on with my kids, I can be engaged in the sermon and growing together as a community in that regard. And I know my kids are learning about Christ and all that stuff. And then I'm reciprocating, right? And so that's part of that membership commitment. That's part of that commitment to caring and serving for one another. And I think that sometimes it looks more like, okay, I know, and I've heard a lot of parents, young parents have done this where they kind of form a little babysitting co-op, where it's like, okay, you watch my kids and then I'll watch your kids. And so you've got like a few couples,
like a community,
in this little babysitting co-op community. But there's that one couple that never babysits, and it's like, okay, you're not part of this co-op. You are just taking advantage of this co-op, And so again, I think that to really be the church, not only do we have to be on mission with what God has called us to do, we have to be engaged and serving and supporting one another.
Well, and I took it one step further, right, in the service where I was talking about participating. I said even like this is about your family participating. You go participate, you get engaged. Well, bring your family with you. I really believe this. Yeah. I think that we sell short kids' abilities to make impact. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've known that from just doing outreach, whereas that nobody wants to see my face knock on your front door. But if I bring my niece and nephews with you and they want to give you a gift, then they like to have that community. You'd be surprised how many old grandmas are like, I haven't seen my grandkids in a while or something. And you're like, oh, and they love to do it, but they're actually the ones that make me not look creepy coming to a front door. It's a community of people, and we're here to give you a gift. So I actually do think they're vital to, connecting with people. People connect through children a lot more than they do from some guy.
And we've tested that out. 9 out of 10 people do believe that it's creepy when Steve knocks on their door by themselves.
Some brown dudes on my front door.
Where'd you get that research?
Oh, it was just a little thing I did.
Okay. Yeah. Let us know.
More creepy is me knocking on the door and then you going around knocking on the door afterwards to ask about whether I knocked on the door or not and whether I was creepy.
Hey, how creeped out were you?
That was the creepy part.
Checking.
Yeah.
Well, then I checked on you.
And it got really creepy at one point.
I just didn't open the door anymore. But I think that it is one of those, any advice you would give to families, like how would you advise them to bring their kids along in something like, or you got a teenager, like I think it's hard sometimes for a teenager or a young adult to really get started into ministry at a church sometimes because they think, I don't have any gifts, I can't do that. And yet they don't see it. Any thoughts?
Well, I will say the first thought that came to my mind when you said that, number one, is I feel as though as a culture overall, we allow the children to make up their own minds about everything, and we don't force them to do anything they don't want to do, even if it's good for them. And so, and I've heard people say, well, I don't make my kids go to church unless they want to. And I think, no, make them go to church, and I will, I do believe that it's our job as parents to direct them and to really kind of force them to do things they don't want to do when we know it is good for their character building, and then allow them, make them reach a point where they are rebelling against that rather than have never had the opportunity to experience that, if that makes sense. I'm not saying I want them to rebel, right? But if you never give them the experience of it, they will never engage themselves in it for the most part, And so again,
that's the truth for anything. Like so people who won't expose their children to church and taking them to church may expose them to all kinds of stuff on TV that the child didn't know about, but now they're like, hey, I want to do that. And it's like, well, you should, don't think of it as forcing your child to do something. Think of it as like you're legitimately like bringing them into a community. And guess what?
Against their will.
No, we always do this. They don't, technically they don't know what they're talking about, right?
But in that sense too, there have been times where, whether it be small group Bible study or going, there's times where I totally don't want to go. It's just like, I absolutely don't want to go. I just want to stay home tonight. I'm tired. And then you go and it's just like, wow, that was amazing. So
there are days I don't want to go on Sunday mornings.
And there's days that, you do force yourself to go.
It'd be weird.
And it wasn't amazing. I get that. But again, I think that sometimes when you push your kids to do things that they don't necessarily feel comfortable doing or want to do, they will find joyful experiences that will bring them back.
You don't want to teach them that comfort is the most important virtue. But what I will say is, like, that just because I work on the outreach side, I don't think people understand that if your kids never learn to help anyone outside of the family, then they actually aren't going to care. So I thought kids that typically care see people that are in need and go, oh, I didn't know there were people that were in need. I thought everybody lived like me. And so I think the best thing you can do, especially if you have a well-to-do family, is to do something as a family to go and actually be involved with helping somebody in your community. And if you're a Christian, it should be something within the church or something out in the community that's working for the church. And there are plenty of those opportunities, like Angels Over Cliffs does things, and there's Make It Cozy. There's all these organizations in town that you can get your kids involved with so that they can see, like, oh, I need to donate to... we've had like a drive where everybody came in and made food to be shipped off to countries that don't have food. What? And they're like, what? And then you follow the country and then you find out, oh my gosh, I didn't know there were poor people in the world. I think of it as a learning lesson to teach your family that your family isn't the only thing that exists on the planet. Right. So there other people have needs, and it does hurt, and it does cost you something if you care about others. If you care only about yourself, that person's going to show up on your front door one of these days, and you're not going to know what to do. And so I think it's a good learning experience if you're talking about children. But also, I think we're underselling. I never thought my niece wanted to go door to door. It wasn't a thing I thought. She was just like, what do you do? And I was like, well, I go door to door, and sometimes people are hurting and they want me to pray for them. And she's like, I like to pray for people. And I thought, okay, well, why don't you go with me? She's like, yeah, that sounds like fun. And you're underselling, like, the kid wouldn't want to do this. Yeah. She gets mad if I don't take her now. So the James Project, if we go door to door, and that's wonderful to see. That's not something I would have thought at all. And so I think you are missing out on opportunities to have your kids grow and to develop passions. You may not know. They might be the next organizer of those things. They might start another group that helps poor people. And why would you not want to expose your family to a group of people that cares for other people? Right. So I think it's a blessing, but I do think it's a cost. And I never underestimate that it will be frustrating to wake up early in the morning and go, dig a ditch for someone else, or go help to paint a fence or paint rocks. And we tried to make things when we do James projects that kids can do. So just even now, I'm open to creating opportunities for that. You got some ideas you want to do? Let's brainstorm and do some fun ideas.
I think also if you're a parent who has a child who's just like, I don't want to go to church, it's like, then I think that step back and go back through that like influence question. Like, well, how have I been influencing my kids? Is it that you're just going to church? Because I'll be honest, when parents just go to church and you go home, like that's what I did growing up, and it was boring. Like, I didn't like it because all I did was, I'm a kid. I don't, what do kids like to do? They want to do something, But when you participate, like when my kids get to participate, they would always they would have the best time. So Andrew, he was 7, and he loved James Project so much because he got to go do something. He's a hands-on kid. He was there so much they gave him a leader shirt because they were just like, you're here, and so he would associate working hard, and now he likes coming to church not to sit in the sermons. That's sad for me, but I'm just kidding.
He hears you a lot.
He goes because he wants to help. He wants to run a camera. He wants to set something up. He wants to help people, and I don't make him. I don't tell him you have to come to church, and no, he wants to because he's a participant. And I think that if you're really having a problem with your child coming, check. Are you participating in church? Or are you just going?
Yeah.
And then what is your attitude about it? Because that's probably what they're picking up. It's not what you do some of the time. It's what you do most of the time. And that's the law of influence. And oftentimes they're picking up the very thing that's probably going on in one of you or your spouse's heart anyway. And so I don't think that actually children are much reflecting their wills as much as they're oftentimes reflecting the culture that you've created in your home.
And youth group's fun. Youth group can be fun too.
Yeah, yeah.
Encourage your children to participate because, a lot of times, especially this day and age, teenagers show up somewhere. They don't necessarily want to be there. They're not excited about being there. And they'll just engage on their phone the whole time and not engage or participate in the community. And then they never feel connected to the community. I don't like youth group because I don't really know anybody. And then it's like, okay, leave your phone in the car, engage with the with the youth there, and make some friends and have some conversations, and you're not going to feel as disconnected. And I'm not saying it works 1,000% of the time, but more often than not, kids will connect with one another unless they have a distraction that they find more interesting. And sometimes we know that that's not the, that interest isn't the healthiest.
I just think, so maybe it's like we have youth group, we have Boy Scouts here at the church, we have American Heritage, we have theater for kids that a lot of the kids I deal with are from the youth group. They go to theater.
You see the enthusiasm when you say theater?
Yeah, theater's fun. But there's just plenty
children's ministry.
We have children's ministry.
We have family week. We've got
a lot of them learn skills in children's ministry. Like when I first started in church, I was older and I taught the younger kids, so I was able to learn how to take care of kids.
Fall Festival, we have a lot of children and students who are running booths and stuff. We had, at our Christmas things, we got a lot of kids who do you've got set up, tear down, you've got greeting, you've got making coffee, you've got even passing the buckets for offering or communion. There is all kinds of places, kids of lots
they run
of
our cameras.
Ages. Actually, lots of kids of all different ages run
Jacob
cameras.
Has done a great job engaging our youth to film the services and run tech.
And I'm talking younger than, I'm talking go down 4th, 3rd, 2nd grade. These kids can greet people. These kids can be trusted to, make sure that a door is opened, or that, hey, that you got that donut and carry this on out. I watched people help set up our hospitality stuff with their little kids a lot. And it's really, really good for them to help participate in these different kinds of things. Go to the James Project and paint something. Go make this little service project.
Neighbors helping neighbors.
There's somebody on the host team, and he shows up, he serves on the host team every week and brings his daughter in. I think she's probably like 8 or 9 years old. We got her a shirt. We got her a name tag, and she serves alongside. And it's been great seeing that. And Jacob has done a great job, again, engaging the young kids with technology. In fact, I do believe that there is an 8-year-old that heads up the video program and teaches the 65-year-olds how to work a camera. And so,
maybe not that far, but I mean, there is a sense that, I think there'd be people who'd be freaked out if I put a 12-year-old up on stage as an announcer.
Why?
Because
a couple of them
I think they would be shocked that a 12-year-old could do it. But I know there are some that could from our out of our
the drama
teams and stuff. It's like that kind of stuff is where you start to see it's multi-generational. It's not and that God didn't give gifts out when you hit a certain age group, and it's so critical. But you can find things for your kids to do, and there is plenty of participation, and it just makes church, quote unquote, the gathering of the saints, a very powerful thing. And it attaches what you're learning to, you're living out stuff you're reading about Jesus.
You see, you living it out, they're living it out with you. And I will say, if we don't engage our children, and get them connected and participating and engaged, well, then when they get to a certain point, we wonder why they just left the church, and found better things to do. Not better things to do, but found other things to do. And it's all of a sudden we're like, I want them to be, engaged in the church. Well, they didn't have that model, that expectation of them growing up. And then when they walk away, it's a little late. Sometimes we live in hindsight going, dang it, I wish I had to do it all over again. So, we live in regret.
Yeah, there's so much more in these subjects that we could go all over the place with, but I think that kind of seals it up for us. Thank you for participating with us. And actually, we would like more participation, even with you guys, as we're starting to look towards a date on the calendar for our live broadcast. We haven't said it totally yet, but we are we're looking at it. And we are also talking about you letting us know what your thoughts are, from questions that you have to comments maybe, or to even prompts that you'd like us to just run off on. Or, hey, if you got segment ideas, we'll play with anything at this point. It is a rabbit trail. And so if you would like to give us any of that comments or any of those things, drop us a line at that's the end of it. Rabbit trail at obcc.church. That's rabbit trail at obcc.church.
And again, when we do that live event, last year we had everybody, stand up at the mic and ask questions. We would love to do a segment too where we have everybody come up to the mic and speak hate mail to us. Just
we'll
give us
it to you.
hateful, mean comments. That'd be fun. So,
yes.
I know Nancy's all raring to go. She's taking notes.
There's the Nancy joke for the day. It took this long, but we got it. Anyway, well, we're just glad you joined us. We hope that you have a great rest of your week, and we hope that you continue to just seek the truth wherever it runs and run after it with all your heart. We love you guys. We hope to see you next week, and God bless.
Boom, chakalaka.
Bye.